Thank you very much, John Roberts. It is time for one of the final practices of this 2009 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, partly cloudy skies. Here in Homestead, Florida, it is the 10th and final race in the chase for the 2009 Sprint Cup. Jimmie Johnson leads Mark Martin by 108 points with Sunday's race in front of him. The scenarios for Jimmie Johnson: 25th or better. If he will clinch the title, he can finish 27th and lead a lap, or 28th if in fact he leads the most laps. 25th or better, regardless of what Mark Martin does, will clinch the championship for Jimmie Johnson as he hopes to make history by winning his 4th consecutive NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship, something that no driver has ever done. Hi everybody, Steve Burns with Larry McReynolds and Jeff Hammond. And you know, we talk about championships. We need to have a championship presence, so who better than to bring in a 3-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion? DW's
all
back
right,
in the house.
boys. Oh, we're all back together again. Yeah,
the boys are back in town.
That's how you know it's championship weekend. We're all together again.
Exactly. And on top of that, you don't have to be sending me emails or
text
tweets.
messages.
Oh, text messages.
We enjoy the text messages,
Right.
by the way.
You know, it's so much fun when you're sitting at home watching it on TV. It's a lot different than being here. So sometimes I see things that are helpful, don't I?
Yes, you do.
You do.
Very much an
Thank you.
outside reporter on the inside.
And we made sure we got into the fact you would be joining us this weekend.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that, because my wife said, "Why are you going to the race?" So, honey, this is why I'm coming down here.
Well, DW, what's the mindset for Jimmie Johnson? 25th or better, so how do you approach the weekend beginning today?
You know, the one thing that I always worry about, and Jeff and I have been there, and he knows what I'm talking about, you got this dilemma. Do I go out there and do I try to win this race? Do I try to run up front? Or do I go out there, get my 5 bonus points, and fall back into the field and just comfortably coast home to another championship? Here's what I know about that team. They got a lot of pride and maybe even a little arrogance at times. You can't let that get in the way of winning this championship. So I'd forget about trying to win this race unless something happened to that 5 car. I can say that.
But let me tell you right now, the calming part of that whole group, we were looking at him a minute ago, Chad Knaus. He's got a game plan, guys. He's had it all year long. He knows what he needs to do. And today, he needs to qualify that 48 car up front. He needs to do whatever is necessary to give Jimmie the right kind of adjustments to get the 48, just like last weekend at Phoenix, somewhere 3rd or better. So not only so they can start up front to get those bonus points, to get a good pit pick, all those things are so important. And the interesting part about it, you take a look right there also, Larry, look how close these two competitors are on top of the truck. Alan Gustafson right across from Chad Knaus. I mean, that's where the battle's coming from between Mark Martin and Jimmie Johnson this weekend. But right now, Chad Knaus has got the game plan. Worry about Friday, worry about qualifying.
Yeah, 2 head coaches in a Super Bowl. They're 50 yards apart from each other. Those guys are barely 5 feet from each other.
Larry, with all the attention, though, on Jimmie Johnson and Mark Martin, guess what? There's 41 other teams that could care less about Jimmie Johnson.
Well, and I can talk about that safely. These guys went into a lot of last races trying to get a championship. I was only fortunate enough, or unfortunate, how you want to look at it, to be in that position twice. When I think about the agenda here for a lot of race teams that have went winless in 2009, when you look at the fact Greg Biffle, Carl Edwards, together, those guys had 11 wins in 2008. This man right here, Ryan Newman, winless. Montoya, oh yeah, Dale Earnhardt Jr., not to mention all 4 Richard Childress cars. No matter what position you're in, you want to end the season on a high note, because that's what you have to live with for the next 3 months.
And Larry, I think it just proves a point is, you know, all we talk about coming here is this championship weekend, and obviously that makes this a special weekend, but there are a lot of teams that have a lot to prove. It's not just about who's going to be walking out of here with the championship. Wow, did you see that?
Man, he was loose.
That 16 was out of control. It's who hadn't won races and who's going to be in the top, you know, who's going to be 13th. Lot going on. Watch this 16 car. You think he's not after it? You think he doesn't want to win this weekend?
Remember, he's been a winner here before, but about a couple laps ago, this is what happened to him, Darrell. Look here.
Hello.
Ooh. I think he keeps thinking this thing's going to get better.
Let's watch it from this angle. That's how I tell you how sideways that thing. Now, you know, I want to make a point real quick. I've always thought that wing maybe was what straightened these cars out. But as I've studied these cars more and more and more, it's that big, fat, flat side of these cars is what's straightening them out. That little bitty piece back here on that wing's not what's doing it. It's that big old fat, flat side of these race cars. You know how I know that? Juan Montoya at Charlotte. When he tore the right rear of his car up, the car was absolutely undrivable.
You know, I think a lot of guys are going to fight some handling issues in this practice session because even though it's normally hot here, it's unusually hot. This racetrack doesn't have a lot of grip right now.
Well, Larry, I mean, this thing lays here. We use it once a year for Cup racing, you know, for NASCAR. And I know yesterday in the Truck Series, they were cording tires in about 20 laps.
Daryl, they've talked about record high temperatures here for Sunday. It could be as hot as 87 degrees.
Whew, that's hot.
Now we look right here, you see Pat Trice and the crew chief. Of course, this is the last ride with Pat Trice and Kurt Busch being together. It's already been well documented. Pat Trice will be moving to Michael Waltrip Racing with Martin Truex Jr. This is the group that maybe stands a chance of breaking up the 1, 2, 3 finish in the points of Hendrick Motorsports. The 2 is only 42 points behind Jeff Gordon in that 24 group.
And right quick, as we look at Pat Trice going down that ladder, probably from the last weekend wearing that Miller Lite uniform, everybody kept saying it wouldn't last, it wouldn't work, they'd get rid of him. But this man and his driver and that entire team, they've really showed what I think the idea of character and doing your job really means. I think they've done an outstanding job of making a great chase finale out of this 2009 season.
You don't run off a winner.
Daryl, when you're at home in Franklin, Tennessee, do you talk to the television?
All the time.
About 9 minutes into a 90-minute practice here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Joining us in the garage, let's go down to Bob Dillner.
Well, Steve, good morning here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. A big weekend for Jimmy Johnson, trying to become the first person in the 61-year history of NASCAR to win 4 consecutive Sprint Cup Series titles. This is Jimmy Johnson's first run on the racetrack right now, and he will be in qualifying mode this entire practice session. They have several sets of tires down here to try to dial in this 48 car for qualifying at Homestead-Miami Speedway. But the big news this morning, Jimmy Johnson says he's not nervous. It's business as usual, but a big signing for Hendrick Motorsports today. Jimmy Johnson and Rick Hendrick have extended their agreement to 2015, and Lowe's has announced that they will extend their contract through 2013. Big news here in the garage area this morning. Wendy Venturini.
Thank you, Bob Dillner. Good morning, everyone. And we'll hear more from Jimmy Johnson on Sunday's NASCAR race day. He is the focus of this week's Real Deal, along with Mark Martin and car owner Rick Hendrick. But let's talk about what's happening on this racetrack this morning. NASCAR is already calling an audible to the drivers. First part of practice this morning when it has to do with coming onto pit road here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Now, the old way used to be using this access road. As you see Martin Truex Jr. coming off the racetrack, NASCAR has asked all the drivers this morning in this practice session, let's try coming off of turn 4 in order to come down pit road. Now, I've already heard feedback from several drivers on the radio, including Casey Kane and Kyle Busch, who is always well-spoken when it comes to making his opinion heard. He said, well, the problem with that is there's no way we could do that in the Truck Series. Yes, in the Nationwide Series, we can come off of turn 4 and maybe in the Cup car, but it's going to cause a wreck if we try and do that off of turn 4 in the Truck Series. So Kyle Busch thinking across all 3 series on how to get to pit road. NASCAR is trying to let these teams practice it in this early morning practice. We're going to get feedback from the drivers and see how well it works. Guys?
Daryl, I've got to look at you and ask, what is the difference in how you pit a truck versus a Nationwide Series and a Cup car?
Well, all 3 take up about the same amount of room. They're all going to come off the track at the same place. The only thing I can think of is maybe he thinks the drivers in the Truck Series don't have the experience to be able to do that. That could be the only thing I'm thinking.
And just so you understand, for those listening at home, this is one of the only, I guess it is the only track right now where we're using that exit lane to come on the pit road. Every other place we use turning off of turn 4, and I know John Darby and everybody, they said they'd like to get that way. The exit road that they use leaving pit road, that works okay because they feel like it helps with the blend line. You got control of your speed, but they really feel like that, if they could get away from using that exit road over there to come on pit road, it would make things a lot better.
I think it simplifies things really, because if you think about coming off the back straightaway down there into turn 3 and drop down onto the exit road to get into the pits, that's a long way. That thing is dirty. You gotta fight the car to get around here to where you pick up pit road speed. Hard to regulate that. I think it makes it fairer for everybody to come off of turn 4. That's my opinion.
And the other thing is too, Daryl, you've been here, you've raced this racetrack, so when you come down into that point, as John Darby and I were talking about this, if you make a mistake and get in a little bit hot, where are you going to go if you get your wheel off?
Right,
You're
out in the grass.
Right back up on the racetrack. So again, it's a little bit of a safety concern. And NASCAR, like I say, they're wanting to work their way into this. That's the reason why they just didn't say, Steve, we're going to do it. You got to live with it. They're wanting some feedback.
Joey Logano, Jeff, right now 19th fastest. I want to ask you guys in terms of Jimmy Johnson. Did a little number crunching this morning. He has started in the top 5 19 times this year. And Chad Canals has always said, and you guys referenced it earlier, the weekend begins on Friday. Where they start is very important.
But it's very few times on Friday. If we knew for sure we didn't have a bad forecast for Saturday, that's all they focus on Friday. And you know, Daryl and Jeff know, there's more than focusing on qualifying than just making the car drive fast. It's things like wheel bearings, lubricants in the rear end, lubricants in the transmission, the engine oil. It takes those guys a while to change that car over from qualifying trim to race trim. They stay in qualifying trim for the most part every single Friday before qualifying.
Well, here's one thing that I can tell you as we look at Casey Kane in a 9 car. The pressure just went up a notch. Just a notch. Because look who's at the top of the board.
5 car.
And look where Jimmy Johnson is. That's no big deal. You say, oh, it's the first run, no big deal. Big deal.
There he is. There's the driver coming out in. He just drove up in the garage area. He gets out of his car. Where am I at?
13.
He looks down. I'm 13.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Look at the top
no.
of 5. He's mentally. Man, if I'm Chad Canals, I cover that doggone score monitor up. Just sit inside that car and tell me what's wrong with it, and I'll let you know when we're good enough, okay? Otherwise, he's going to start worrying himself into trouble.
In other words, the driver's on a need-to-know basis.
He needs to be that way today.
Well,
don't let him psych it out.
Here's breaking news. Mark Martin is fastest in practice on Friday.
Right.
I think we've seen that about 75 to 85% of the time.
Remember, don't get so consumed racing one guy you screw up. Now, what you said, Daryl?
No, but you're only racing one guy.
I see there's going to be a lot of zigging and zagging on this deal.
You're only racing one guy, and he's at the top of the board. That's all I know.
Wendy, what's going on with Casey Kane?
Well, Casey Kane, 18th in this practice session right now, struggling with his race car. His biggest concern is turn 4. That's where he needs the help. He's free on entry, but then he gets to the center and starts to push. The nose will wash out, and the car will step out on him, but then it will come back, he says. So it's a weird feeling in turn 4, according to Casey Kane. Right now, he comes into Homestead-Miami Speedway 10th in points. Casey Kane knows how to get around this racetrack. However, he's having a little bit of trouble in turn 4 right now. Larry?
Wendy, I've watched this race team for the last month, and I think this race team is preoccupied with a lot of other things that's going on. I've talked to some guys on this race team, and they said, you know, we want to worry about what our race car's doing, but we're worried about 2010. Nobody will tell us what we're doing for 2010. They laid a bunch of people off over at Richard Petty Motorsports a couple of weeks ago, and I just think there's a lot of distractions with this organization, this race team right now.
How would you like to be that good and not know what you're going to do next?
Exactly. Unknowns. Nobody likes unknowns.
So Mark Martin, Juan Pablo Montoya, the quickest here in practice. We'll be right back to Homestead. Tonight on Speed, NASCAR's roughest and toughest get one last chance to settle scores, trade paint, and celebrate. Don't miss the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series live from Homestead tonight at 7:30 Eastern. Ron Hornaday clinched the championship, but a lot of racing yet to happen here in Homestead.
Hey, aren't you going to be up here covering that too?
Oh, yeah. Michael wanted me to come up and work with him tonight and help him out, so I'll be up here for the truck race.
Wait 1 minute. Do you believe that Michael asked Daryl to
Yeah,
help?
he invited me down.
I don't know who asked who, but I know one thing you're going to be able to talk about is Kyle Busch coming from the back of the field, because that is an engine change going on right now. And remember, quite a battle points-wise between the 51 truck owner and the 33 truck for the Owners' Championship.
Yeah, and by the way, just remember, this is my brother's last regular race, you know. I mean, next year he'll be on a limited schedule. Don't know what that's going to look like. So kind of wanted to come in and give him some moral support.
Yeah, because of guys like Mark Martin, he may come back the next year for a full season, so I don't want to hear it.
You're right. You're right. He's not that old.
Bob Dillner, what's going on with Mark Martin?
Well, Mark Martin getting ready to go out in the racetrack for his second mock qualifying run of the day. After the first run, Alan Gustafson and Mark Martin like the race car, just a little bit loose coming up off the corners. But guys, I spoke to the crew this morning, and you know, we're joking around about the chances of Mark winning the championship down here. And they said, hey, it's a possibility. And if you consider this, guys, Mark Martin has gained more than 108 points on Jimmy Johnson 9 times this year. I know it's a stretch, but it can be done, and it's on the back of everybody's minds down here in that Hendrick organization.
All right, Bob, real quick. 9 times in their career racing each other. Not in 2009. And one of those times just happened to be a couple of weeks ago at Texas.
Yeah, big pickup there.
He might get a little reprimand here from NASCAR because you're supposed to use the access road to get out on the racetrack. I know qualifying, you can go right out onto the racetrack, which Mark's the first guy I've seen do that. I didn't know if they were allowing that today or not before qualifying.
Forgiveness, not permission. That works with everybody except our wives, right?
And we just got a report from NASCAR control over there. Miss Karen said it is legal to do during this practice
Very
session.
good. Then he will get no reprimand from NASCAR.
Yeah, you can work on your qualifying during this first practice session.
If Karen Mason Cup says it,
That's right.
So.
That's right.
It's so.
And I would say that was on the same set of tires, and that just goes to show you how much grip you lose from one run to another. Lost about 3.5 tenths from his first run to that run.
Darrell, let's help put this 2009 season in perspective. When we went to Daytona back in February, did you think Tony Stewart would have as good a season as he's had as an owner?
I sort of felt like Tony would, but I think the surprise with me was how well they did with both cars. To get both cars in the chase this year. And people always say, oh, it's a brand new team, and it's it. That team was there. That team was in existence, but he put a tune-up on it. He went in, put new people in place, and I tell you, he's been a surprise to a lot of folks.
And you talk about putting people in place. One of those folks happened to be Darian Grubb, his crew chief, and I like the term rebuilt. They rebuilt that organization basically in Tony Stewart's image. It has really paid off. Talked to Darian this morning. I said, Darian, what are you thinking about? Are you going to have a little time off? He said, no. He said, Jeff, honestly, I've got to get back to the shop. I got to start getting things organized for next year. He said, if you remember, it was a year ago that he left Hendrick and went to Tony Stewart's team right after Homestead. He said, I'm completing my first year. I have to get my people put in place.
Coming to you.
What they did is they hired a bunch of people last year, put them under contract for 1 year with a 1-year option. So now they're going back and they're having to readdress contract issues, getting people put in place for 2010, and that's real important because this is the time of the season you can get new people or change people out and try to make sure you keep your good ones.
As we watch Juan Pablo Montoya, Jeff, it's interesting you said that. Early in the year, Darian told me the no testing policy in an odd way helped them because it allowed them to get all their procedures in place. How they even loaded the truck the car onto the truck sounds simple, but by not testing, that helped them.
Well, this year was kind of like the best of times and the worst of times to start a team or do what they did. Best of times because a lot of people were looking for work. A lot of really, really talented people. So you're able to go out and get good people to come to work for you. And then the good news for them is in a tough economy, they've been able to find sponsorship. And, other than Ryan's car, maybe every now and then not having a sponsor on, but Tony's got great sponsors, and now Ryan does too for next year. So they've done an outstanding job all the way around, from the business side and the performance side.
Why are you talking about outstanding? What do you think about the year that this guy has had, Juan Pablo Montoya? In my opinion, I have just been beside myself how well he's done this season.
Well, I thought that when they ended the year last year, he and Brian Patty together, they had a lot of great runs. Had terrible finishes because something happened to the car, they wrecked or whatever. But I felt like they were going to have a good year. I actually picked him as my dark horse to make the chase. He came through for me.
He was chasing that race car big time.
Yeah, speaking of chasing, he's chasing the wheel. Look at this thing, Darrell.
It's about what
Watch
happened to
his
Greg
hands.
Biffle
Watch his
earlier on the
hands.
exit of the corner.
That's late exit, and you see it's already sideways a little bit there. Now
Look at
watch,
the hands.
whoa back,
Oh.
whoa back.
But you know one thing I'm noticing, they have not been bashful. I watched Tony.
Here we go. Here
This
we go.
is going to be
Here we
more
go.
than chasing it here.
Look
Yeah,
out!
hang
Look
on to
out!
it,
Look
hang
out!
on to
Look
it.
out!
Hold it here. Just hold the brake. Hold
Yeah.
the brake. You'll be fine. Just
Blew out his
hold the brake.
tires.
That's all
You're
he'll
fine.
need, though, is 4
Got
good
a
years.
flat front tire. That's right on the splitter.
Yeah,
Just
they
fine
don't. He
right
doesn't
here.
need to try to
Anything.
move it right there.
No,
No.
they need to go out there, put 4 tires on it.
If he tries
Go
to
backwards. Don't.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
It looked like it
I'd
popped
tell
the
him.
liner too. I can't tell.
I'd
It's
tell
the
him.
Eanes that way. Eanes back up the track. Yeah.
I tell him to whoa it up.
He's going to tear the splitter right off that car. But
20.
Darrell, you could see it he was right on that edge, and every time he went back right, he was getting a little bit further out, He couldn't hang on to it.
I don't know what it is about turn 4, but I heard in the truck series and now here today that turn 4 is just giving everybody a fit.
Look how high he is. I mean, he's above the black. We know they'll be racing there, but I don't know that there's a lot of rubber up there.
They're in there, but I've been watching everybody in 3 and 4 down here, and they are up in the gray.
Yeah.
I mean, up almost to the wall. And of course, you know, he likes to run up there. That's kind of his territory. But that's a pretty nice job of saving that bad boy, I can tell you that.
Got back in the throttle to kind of keep it off the wall, and then when it got around sideways, just locked it up. And he used up 4 good years, but right now it's better than the car.
There's not a lot of room, as you can tell, off when you come off turn 4, the wall to the inside here on this front straightaway, not a lot of room right there to save a race car.
And Larry, the good thing is Juan Pablo has stopped before he tears that splitter up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need to go any further than what he needed to, that's for sure.
So 23 minutes into practice, caution out for Juan Pablo Montoya's spin. Stay with us here at Homestead-Miami Speedway on Speed. Daryl, when you dream, do you dream in speed?
I dream in color.
We're introducing the Speed Dream Ride. You'll see new shows, old favorites, and have the chance to win an experience you never dreamed possible. The Speed Dream Ride, presented by Castrol Edge. Find out more at speeddreamride.com. Meanwhile, back at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, Juan Pablo Montoya out of the car as practice is back underway. Another look at what happened at JPM.
He had to give me a new set of gloves, Larry. One bad boys out right there.
I guarantee he was a busy man the last 2 or 3 laps through there. And I've been up here trying in my mind to analyze, watching all these cars. You know, one thing that is a little different, and we had some guys that fought this situation at Texas. This is the Texas tire combination. It's a softer left side tire than what they're running on the Nationwide Series or what we've run here. That left front tire is digging into the racetrack. It's probably making these cars on the free side.
Well, watch that left front tire. It starts smoking. It's the first tire that started smoking.
Take a break at the Homestead-Miami Speedway. Mark Martin is still fast as he's run just 3 laps of practice. We'll be right back. Back at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, now 30 minutes into a 90-minute practice. The crew's still working on that number 42 Chevrolet for Juan Pablo Montoya. Now, okay, Mr. NASCAR Performance, we have a little assignment here for you.
Well, we do, because we get asked a lot of email questions. You see the crew member carrying that race tire there that has treads on it. No, we still do not race treaded tires on NASCAR Sprint Cup Series cars. What these are, they're almost like a controlled set of tires that Goodyear gives the race teams to weigh the car out. It gives you a consistent set of tires, because if you have a set of tires maybe that just varies a little bit in size or circumference, it'll throw off the weight. So this just gives you something consistent to weigh that car and measure that car out with.
Bob Dillner is standing by with Juan Pablo.
Yeah, and they got those set-up tires on the 42 machine here. We have Juan Pablo Montoya. Juan looked like just a little bit loose. How wild was that?
Pretty high, you know. We got a very good race car. You know, his target car is pretty fast here. It's a little loose on gas, and I wanted to see how far I could go. And I don't think that good. It's been kind of stepping out every time I get on the gas, and I stepped out and tried to stay on the gas, and you can't.
You found out how far you can go, buddy.
Yeah, we're just trying different things, you know, different race lines to see where it would work for a qualifying run. And you know, here it's crazy. You know, you can run the bottom, the top, and everywhere is fast.
Second on the charts right now, Juan Pablo Montoya. That was his race trim. Now they're going to switch over to qualifying trim, guys.
It doesn't hurt anything that he's a second quick. You know, I mean, it's not like the car might be spun out and in the garage.
And he by no means is panicking just yet. Now this is Terry Labonte in the 08 car. We have 48 cars that are here. All 48 cars have practice. And I know walking through the end of the garage here with the Go or Go Homers, a lot of them well documented that we have 3 past champions that are in the Go or Go Home group. So you know the top 35 in owner points, those cars are locked in, and all these guys that are trying to qualify on time, they know that one of those past champions, whether it's through virtue of qualifying or through virtue of the past championship provisional, will take up another one of those spots.
Yeah, I'd be pretty comfortable if I was Terry, and I think that's why he's here, because he's pretty sure he's going to make the race. This guy right here, Bobby Labonte, he's always qualifying in the top 35 without any problem. And Bill Elliott's sitting here third quick. So I think Terry probably did the math before he got here and said, you know, I feel like I could probably get this old girl in the show.
Right now, Bobby being 25th, and you've already pointed out Bill being third. It looks like these cars are working pretty well for both of these drivers.
You know, Darrell, we were talking at break, speaking of Bill Elliott, you know, back in 2003, Bill led up to about the last corner of the last lap going into turn 3. He cut a tire down, and Bobby Labonte passes him right at the end of the back straightaway. In fact, that's the last time that Bobby won a race.
I remember it so well, Larry, because they asked Bill, he was standing, Bill got out and walked around the car and looked at it, you know how Bill kind of meandered around. They asked him after the race, so he said, what were you thinking? He said, I wish I had a can of gas.
But he is third quickest right now in that 21 car, by far the fastest of our go or go home guys.
And Bobby Labonte will join us on trackside later tonight.
Hey, our party one more time.
That's right.
Friday night.
2 more times. We're going to have one Saturday night, too.
Get the seat out of that car. That one car.
It's going to be a new driver in that seat.
That's always, it kills me when I think about the 18 car last year. Steve Addington, and you know how that car had struggled. And they asked Steve, you know, from the year before and last year when they put Kyle in the car, what did you change? He said the seat.
Jamie McMurray became official, is headed over to that 1 car next season.
But you know, back to that 1 car real quickly, finished 5th last week at Phoenix. That was their first top 5 finish, the 1 car Martin Truex Jr., since finishing in the top 5 at Watkins Glen in 2008.
Yeah, Larry, I watched that race last weekend, and that car stayed good all the race long. He didn't
Which
have
has
a
been
lot
one of the
problems.
things they fight.
One of the problems they've had, yeah.
Of course, Martin Truex Jr. headed over to Michael Waltrip Racing to drive the 56 car next season. Denny Hamlin right now, 15th fastest overall.
Hey, Rich, give us a sign, Rich.
Hang loose, guys. Tonight on Speed, Bobby Labonte chats about his new contract with TRG when he stops by the ultimate Friday night house party of his NASCAR trackside tonight, 10:30 Eastern, here on Speed.
Party. Hey, I
now.
like it.
Now that's a promo right there.
That is
I would
it.
say that's about as good as it gets.
You know
right?
something?
you know
Every
what?
now and then,
that
trackside
Rutledge?
does get that deep. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, the only thing wrong with that is not Rutledge.
It might be.
You think it is?
No. He can't hold his breath that long.
Okay, good point. Good point.
You know, guys, we were showing Joey Logano a while ago, and right now Joey's 23rd quickest. But, you know, when you think about this 20 team, what they've really accomplished in 11 seasons is pretty phenomenal. They have the longest running win streak of winning at least 1 race every season. In 11 seasons ago, 1999, they were ending their first season. They won the first race here. They won the first 2 races, and Tony Stewart was named the 1999 Rookie of the Year. Well, it looks like in 2009 that Joey Logano in this 20 car will be named the 2009 Robestos Rookie of the Year and won a race this year.
But one thing I want to point out about what's going on over there is the continuity. We talk about how you become a good race team is because you stay together as a team. Greg Zipadelli and so many members of that organization were there in the beginning with Tony Stewart and Greg, and they haven't gone anywhere. I mean, they've got a great family there with the 20 car, and this young man is a beneficiary of all their experience and what they know how to do over at Joe Gibbs Racing, and I think there's great things, even more great things to come with him.
I just wondered with Tony Stewart, and well, we got Mark Martin here on the screen, and of course he's still he's still the fastest car. I just wonder what would have happened with Kyle, though, if he and Zippy had hooked up. Because when you think about Tony Stewart and Kyle, very similar personalities, kind of feisty young guys, you know, that would have made a lot of sense to me.
It's like everything was just about a year off from the way it needed to unfold.
Exactly.
Yeah, but guys, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I mean, you wonder how the chemistry worked out. I think that, again, what Joe Gibbs and JD did by putting this young man with Greg Zipadelli will pay bigger dividends long term than even what they did, you know, putting Steve Addington with Kyle. I think Kyle could be anybody could be crew chief with him and be good.
You run your best car every race, and you put your best people together. That's my theory.
I'm glad it was a theory.
And how did that work out for you? Never mind.
Don't go there.
Kevin Harvick looking for a little speed, just 31st overall. Kevin has completed 8 laps of practice, and he heads to pit road.
But, you know, this was one of the cars I talked about at the top of the show. You know, they've really and truly been searching all year long. They won the Budweiser shootout. They finished second in the Daytona 500. And you go back to last week. He wins the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race. He finishes second in the Nationwide Series race, gets lapped twice at Phoenix, a place that he almost could drive blindfolded.
Well, think about this. Those 2 races that he was first and second in, who owns that car?
Kevin Harvick.
And the car he run on Sunday, who owns that car?
Richard Childress.
Don't you think there's probably some really funny, interesting meetings on Monday morning? Because last week he had Childress motors in his cars, I think, for the first time, didn't he? Did he switch back last week?
He did in the truck because they ran the RO7 in his truck that he won with.
And the other thing I was thinking about is like Juan Montoya and Truex, how well those cars have run this year with ECR motors. And you look at how ECR has run up until the last week or 2. I mean, that just tells you that it's not under the hood. It's what you put around that motor that makes the difference.
We saw Juan Pablo Montoya a little while ago. If he's been one of the biggest surprises to the plus side, David Reagan has to be one of the biggest disappointments. Just narrowly missed making the chase last year. Comes here 27th in points.
But they are making a change on this car for 2010. Jimmy Finning is still staying with the organization, and Donnie Wingo, because we know pretty much the 26 team is going away, Donnie Wingo will move over to be the crew chief for David Reagan in the 6 car.
It's never a good sign when we take a look at Jimmy Finning coming down from the top of the transporter, longtime veteran crew chief. When they start experimenting with your car by putting, and I say an experiment, they've got the new FR9 engine in that number 6 car. I know it's ready to go, but usually, you know, somebody's got to start off with it, and usually you won't put your best car with that engine in it.
42 minutes into practice. Take a look at the best 5-lap averages as we head to break.
And welcome back to Sprint Cup Series practice session here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway. Nice weather for us here in the Florida area. Now let's talk about what's going on in the garage area here this morning. And let's start with Greg Biffle. Greg Biffle, who's 10th in this practice session so far, has run 15 laps. That's enough in their race trim because crew chief Greg Irwin has decided to switch over to qualifying trim. Now in that race trim that Greg Biffle ran earlier, he said it wanted to slide the nose all the way to the fence. It's driving off the corner okay, but everyone is beating him off the center, and that's what he felt in that race trim. Now when they switch over to qualifying trim, you'll see him knock a few tenths off that, jump up the chart, hopefully. But Greg Biffle comes into the Homestead-Miami Speedway with 3 wins at this racetrack. However, we all know Greg Biffle has been winless in 2009. This is his last chance, the last race of the season for Greg Biffle to go to victory lane, and his chances are large since he has so much success at this speedway. For another guy with multiple wins here, let's head over to Bob Dillner.
That's right, and that is Tony Stewart. The switchover occurring in the 14 garage right now, too. He started off in race trim. In fact, he's 31st quick, but you saw just before we went to break, he's top 5 among the 10-lap averages. Tony said his car was pretty darn balanced in those race-type runs. His fastest lap coming in lap number 10. So right now they are doing the switch around here as well, and he's hoping to pick up some tenths around the racetrack when they go into mock qualifying mode as well, Larry Mack.
Yeah, right now, again, this is kind of what Tony Stewart does each week, is start in race trim, go to qualified trim. This 31 car of Jeff Burton, their run last week, obviously all the focus was on the 48 car, and rightly so. He led 238 out of 312 laps. But this 31 car, we saw they were fast in practice on Friday. They were fast on Saturday's practice. But Jeff Burton said I underdrove the race car qualifying, and they ended up starting 36. They finished second, and the thing about that finish is they had to drive there. There was no strategy in that race. We only had 4 cautions. There was no staying out. There was no 2 tires. They pretty much, with the aid of a pretty successful pit crew on pit road, drove from 36 to second place. A great run for that team last week.
We'll go back down to Wendy.
Well, thanks, Steve. Greg Biffle out of his race car while the crew switches over to qualifying trim. We were listening to you on the radio. What kind of feedback have you given your crew chief, Greg Irwin, to make that race trim better?
Well, it's the car started out really good. You know, part of our issue is our cars have been really fast when the track's got a lot of grip. And when the track heats up and gets slick, our cars tend to fall back from the field. So we're working on that grip after the track gets slick. But car's pretty decent. Looks like we're going to have to run the top. This racetrack, you know, gives up grip over years, and the tires we have, you know, everybody's going to be running the top, it looks like. So working on the upper groove right now. But see if we get this thing qualified up front.
Good luck to Greg Biffle this week, and it sounds like a lot of guys are trying to work that top line in this practice session. Jeff?
Yeah, Wendy, while you were talking to Greg Biffle, Juan Pablo got 4 brand new Goodyears put back on his car, made a little adjustment to that 42, and now he is the fastest cat in the alley. He's now faster than Mark Martin, and undoubtedly got it snugged up just enough, Darrell.
Well, you know what? That's a mark of a real, true professional right there. Took it out there, he spun her out. Okay, boys, we back that up just a skosh. Think I'll be all right.
That is pretty impressive to go to the top of the charts after his last lap was spinning out over turn 4.
Hey, speaking of qualifying, our man Russell Wenrick just handed me the qualifying order. Mark Martin will go out 7th. Jimmy Johnson, meanwhile, 33rd.
Ooh, I like 33rd.
Qualifying at 3:10 Eastern here at Homestead-Miami Speedway.
Driver momentum swing again now.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's another one in the plus column.
You need to throw that qualifying sheet away, too. Cover the monitor up, throw the qualifying
Chad, where are we
sheet away.
qualifying? I'm not sure.
You just go to your car and get in it.
We'll tell you when to get in it.
Hey, how would Junior Johnson say, boy, don't worry about the mule going blind, just load the wagon and hold the line.
And we're looking at Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Mark Martin's teammate right now. He is 15th quickest. He's run a total of 6 laps.
But that speed that Warren put up there, that's a little quicker than the pole here last year. Pole here last year was like a 171.6, I think. That's
and that was David Rudiman, I think.
Rudiman on pole, yeah.
31.462 to be exact. So that's 31.444. So you're right.
Skosh.
You did your homework. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Wendy.
Had 6 months.
Well, we're glad to have you back, DW. Kyle Busch on the racetrack, not extremely happy with his race car. He says there's no rear grip, he can't turn the wheel. When he's holding the wheel straight, it's even holding it straight through the corner. He just can't turn it, and he said it is killing his speed out there. You know, we heard from his new crew chief, Dave Rogers, last week in The Real Deal say that, hey, we're still in our honeymoon phase, and I guarantee, even though Kyle's not happy with his car, things are looking up between Dave Rogers and Kyle Busch. But come Daytona in February, you could see get it down and dirty on the radio, because we know Kyle's very opinionated, and we'll have to watch and see when we hit February for our next race if the honeymoon truly is over. Bob?
Well, Wendy, no honeymoon phase for Steve Letarte and Jeff Gordon. He is in mock qualifying runs, and you know what? This has been one of those tracks that have been pretty difficult for this team. This track and Texas right now, 10th quick for Jeff Gordon. But I just talked to the team and I said, okay, what is it? A little loose, a little tight? They said, how about a little bit of both right now? He's still trying to get the balance down on this racetrack. They're going to spend this entire session in that mock qualifying mode, so they're hoping to get a very good starting spot for Sunday's race, because track position so important. But right now, Jeff Gordon, kind of like at Texas, not exactly liking his car just yet.
And you know, this is one of the tracks that he has no poles, he has no wins. In fact, of the 22 racetracks that we race at right now today, this is the only track that Jeff Gordon has not won at. In fact, Hendrick Motorsports, they've never won at this racetrack. They've won at a lot of others that we don't race at, though.
They drink a lot of champagne here, though.
They do. Now, NASCAR on Speed is always on with NASCAR on Speed Broadband, a free super site for the hardcore fan. Get the best of NASCAR on Speed, plus exclusive videos you can't get anywhere else. Log on now to the video section of speedtv.com or NASCAR.com. 52 minutes into a 90-minute practice. Juan Pablo Montoya still the quickest at a 31.44, which is 171.734 miles per hour.
Guys, I just want to tell you, I'm set at home. I watch this stuff on TV.
We know.
Okay? And so I just want y'all to know y'all do an incredibly good job of bringing practice, qualifying, whatever shows y'all got. I learn more watching y'all than I do just about anything else.
You miss us, don't you?
And I miss you. Yeah, I want to be here with you because, you know, I always feel like I could add a little something.
But you do.
You do.
Well,
We give you credit.
People get the benefit of your analysis via text messaging.
I'm always worried, though, because I text and then I wait, and I said, well, they're not going to say anything.
We're always impressed because you are always watching, best we can tell, except during lunchtime.
Y'all were, where were y'all? Y'all were in California, or where you were, and I said, holy cow, it's early, but I guess I can get up
Come on,
and
watch the boys.
We even got a happy anniversary in for you on your 40th anniversary. We're full service.
It's good to know.
Yep.
See Paul Menard here in the 98 car. Paul's run a total of 20 laps, and in fact, that was a practice qualifying run because he went from 45th over to 18th quickest in this 98 car. Another one of those cars and teams that they just didn't produce like I think everyone anticipated they would this year.
Yeah, Paul really had improved a lot as a driver. I'm just not sure why they haven't been able to get the numbers.
Do we know where he's going to be next year?
What have we heard?
I think the verdict is still kind of out on that.
That's what I
There's
thought.
a little bit of negotiating still going on with the folks at Yates Racing and Childress. They were doing some negotiating. But here's a guy we keep talking about, Ryan Newman, who's been quite a bit a surprise this year, 4th quickest in his practice session. And interestingly enough, I was listening to him in his interview today down in the press room. They were talking about being with Stewart again, having 1 year under the belt. And he says the good thing about it is, guys, we surprised ourselves making that chase, but we didn't win a race yet. We need to get to victory lane and be able to, help our teammate out by having a car good enough that he can kind of get our notes and we can compare them and make this unit really complete. Since Tony's already won, we've been riding his coattails a little bit, but next year or even this Sunday, we hope to turn that around. And he had another interesting point right quick. He said, they asked him, what would you do about the 48 team going for 4 in a row? How would you stop it? He said, get me some dynamite and blow the 48 car up. He said, that's the only way you're going to stop those guys, blow their deal up.
Wendy, do you have your headset back on?
I do. It's commercial break.
We saw you signing autographs.
They were throwing to you. They were throwing to you, Wendy, but they couldn't get you.
Yeah, I knew better. I know what a 1.5 and 2-minute breaks are.
We were spying on you.
There you are.
You
Yeah.
were.
Taking pictures, receiving gifts. We saw the whole episode.
They were homemade cookies too. How sweet.
Look.
Ah, looky there.
And look at her. She's, oh, for me? Oh, no, surely not.
Why I can't?
Did you see me? I'm like, I really don't think I should be eating cookies. I'll send them to you guys. How about
There
that?
you go. We have a home
Daryl
forum.
wants them. Daryl wants them.
I'll take them.
Caught in the act during commercial break. Well, who's caught out there on the racetrack? It's Ryan Newman in his qualifying trim. He jumped up to 4th, Hammond. You talked about that, but he was 28th in his race trim right before that. Now, he has been loose all practice session in his race trim. They made him tighter and tighter, and he said it felt better and overall better feel in race run. Now, on that qualifying trim, we haven't heard any feedback from Ryan Newman yet, but we do know he just switched over, going out there and posting 4th quickest lap for Ryan Newman, so much better in qualifying trim than he has been in race runs. We'll keep you posted how the practice continues to go on for Ryan Newman and what they're continuing to make him better, and I definitely won't be eating those cookies in this practice session. You can't do anything
We
on
caught
TV.
ya.
We're
Thank you,
always
Wendy.
watching.
Well, Greg Biffle won 3 straight races here between 2004 2006. Guys, we saw him loose early, but he has jumped up into the 3rd position.
I think the jumping I was looking at, was it you, Jeff?
No, I was watching the guy that's where the big race is right now. I know that Greg Biffle's important, but the guy behind him is the one that's kind of a note of interest. Jimmy Johnson struggling back there. He dropped all the way back to like 27th in his practice qualifying run. Comes out this time, Daryl. We were watching 4th quick.
Yeah,
Okay, uncover the scoring monitor.
yeah. No, you go over and say, are you happy now?
That guy right there is never happy.
Nope.
He told me today, he said, they got lucky at Phoenix. I said, quit lying to me.
What time's performance on, Larry?
10 a.m. Sunday morning.
Just one airing?
Just one airing.
Sunday on Speed, it's NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot. Wendy Venturini sits down with championship contenders Jimmy Johnson and Mark Martin and owner Rick Hendrick. 11:30 Eastern, and also DW, Jeff Hammond, Larry Mack, myself, and Kyle Petty joined the big show.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun working with Kyle when we did the Hall of Fame thing. We,
Y'all did a nice job
You
with it.
did.
It really was.
The Petties and the Waltrips working together are rather unusual, but it
Dogs
seemed to
and
go over
cats.
pretty well.
Brian France will also make an appearance on NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot.
And we're watching Jeff Gordon here, who is 17th quickest, but as you were reading that NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot promo, the Home Depot car, Joey Logano, jumped up the 2nd quickest in that 20 car.
I bet he scared himself getting into turn 1 because I thought he was on a pretty fast lap. He went into turn 1 and he looked like he was a little unstable, but he was flying going in there.
Of course, he's all the racetrack up.
Yep.
He sat on the pole a year ago for the Nationwide Series race here.
I think that's the only race he's run here, isn't it?
Yes, he did not run the Cup race a year ago.
Jeff Gordon just jumps up into the 7th position. Completes his 7th lap.
Interesting thing is these guys are practicing. They're all up right next to the wall, using up the whole racetrack. But when they get ready to make these qualifying runs, they are down on that white line, baby.
The shortest distance.
Elliott Sadler just jumps up into the 12th spot. He's the fastest Dodge. Let's go to Bob Dillner.
Down here in the garage area, the two guys that are battling for the championship actually talking and joking around just a little bit. Jimmy Johnson just climbed out of his car, all smiles, just really concentrating on the handling during these mock qualifying runs. But he and Mark Martin are talking right now specifics about what the cars are doing on the racetrack, and how you can know that is just before we came down here, you could see the hand movements that Jimmy and Mark were doing inside the cockpit of the race car. And Mark Martin right now still just a little bit loose off. That's what they're really concentrating on. They bolted some new stickers on there, got it back up on the scale pads. They're about to go out in just a second here. You can see Jimmy talking to Alan Gustafson right now about what his car is doing on the racetrack. And that's what you got to love about this Hendrick organization, and possibly DW, why they're so darn successful. Rick Hendrick has just feed into these guys teamwork, 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 and the success is proven on the racetrack.
No doubt about that, but if I'm Jimmy Johnson, I'm going over and saying, Mark, your car looks really loose. I'm going to go talk to Alan about it. Maybe y'all need to tighten that thing up. You're going to spin out.
Yeah, but I think what Jimmy's trying to do, he probably walked in there and asked Mark what's going on here. Then he didn't quite buy what Mark said, so he goes to Alan. Now he's going to compare notes. They go back over. He's going to get with Chad and those guys right there and say, neither one of them know what's going on.
But, you know, I don't think that we have driven home the fact enough. And we certainly know that the 2-car and Kurt Busch is sitting back there 4th in the points, fairly close to 3rd. But, yeah, if the 48 car could pull this championship off and get 4 consecutive, but Hendrick Motorsports, the top 3 in points right now. It's never been done before. And you know what? That may be a long time before we ever see that again.
Yeah, well, this is, what is it, 9 championships?
This would be their 9th championship. Well, it will be their 9th championship, of course.
Yeah, so that's more than anybody, right? 9 is more than, I don't think anybody. Petty Enterprises had, what, 8?
I don't know if that was a yes or a no.
Well,
I
thought I was looking at Slob over there for a minute.
Are you talking about total championships, or are you talking about Cup championships?
Help me out.
Hendrick Motorsports drivers have 12 NASCAR championships.
Total. Combined.
Total. 4 for Jeff Gordon, 3 for Jimmy Johnson, 1 for Terry Labonte, 1 for Brian Vickers, and 3 for Jack Sprague.
Yeah, but those
I think you're talking strictly Cup.
Yeah.
9 Cup championships.
Let's see, 4 for Gordon, 3 for Jimmy Johnson.
We know
that's 7.
they'll have 9.
Labonte has 8. That would make 8 rather.
And then 9 coming. We know they're going to have a 9th.
And I'm pretty sure
Jimmy Johnson's making the rounds right now. Down there talking to Tony Stewart.
they talk about.
Daryl, is this nervous energy? Is that what this is right here? Rather than just sitting there in the car or just standing at the hauler?
I think it makes you more comfortable if you go to the other guys and they affirm maybe your setup, the track, tires. How's your car feel? Your car maybe is different than mine, because those guys all have the same. They got the same chassis, and they share notes. So I got a 400-pound spring in the right front. What do you got? Just to make him comfortable with what he has.
Yeah, but or is it also checking on what he's feeling in a certain part of the racetrack? Maybe like you talked about turn 4. Hey, did you notice when you got in here and you ran this line? Did you feel this when you turned down?
Yeah.
Or did your front end give up a little bit and then kind of hook?
But I will say this: I never have seen him do that before. I've never seen these guys wandering around in the garage talking, you know, from one car to the other like that. So again, I think it's just assurance that what I'm feeling and what I got, I'm right on.
Cover
Chad.
that monitor up, Chad.
Yep,
I'm telling
cover it
you.
up. He's behind you. About 25 minutes left in practice. Make your plans now for the 2010 Daytona 500 to purchase a specially priced Speed Trackside Tavern ticket package. You'll get a Daytona Super Stretch ticket and exclusive admission to the Speed Trackside Tavern. For more details, go to speedtv.com, keyword promo.
Can you believe, and I think very fitting with DW being up here, 10th year of NASCAR on Fox starting next year will be our 7th Daytona 500.
Boy, it doesn't seem like it, though. It just doesn't seem like it's been that long. But one
10
thing
years.
I'll never forget that first one, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever forget that one.
We've had some exciting ones. We've had some, I guess you
We've
could
had
say,
some rain delays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Gillen lands in that 0-2 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, just 34th. All right, Larry, how many days until the 2010 Daytona 500?
Uh-oh.
It is
go to the notes.
86 days, and for those of y'all that like to be precise, 2,064 hours until the green flag drops.
2,000 hours?
2,064 hours.
86 days. Thank you, Larry. I think.
I knew you were going to ask me. That's written already calculated it out. And it starts early.
That's right,
1 o'clock Eastern.
I tell you what, that scoring monitor right now, guys, is jumping around more than a little league shortstop.
It is. But Darryl, you know, we see this every Friday because we do have some cars that are out there working on practice race runs, and then now we're down in the last 25 or 30 minutes. They're deciding to make those practice qualifying runs. In fact, this man's teammate, Clint Boyer, just jumped up to the top.
Jack Bauer just went to the top.
You say more nervous than a little league shortstop? I've always thought it was more nervous than a cat on a hot tin roof.
Yeah, that too.
Hey, speaking of jumping around, what about your boy John Calipari at Kentucky? He was all over the place yesterday.
Yeah, but you see, they got some. That's a young team, and they got some shooters, man. That's what we haven't had in the past. But what about the who they played last night? I can't remember anyway. They set a new record for threes.
They played Sam Houston
Sam
State.
Houston, yeah. They were knocking threes down from the. I mean, they're crossing the line at half court and throw one up and go in.
Calipari would call timeout and run onto the floor.
I like Calipari. He's lit them up.
Earnhardt Jr.'s lighting them up. You see Mark Martin, his teammate Earnhardt Jr. just jumped up to third. As Larry said, Boyer's the quickest. Biff back on it. He is 10th right now.
He's working on that right rear quarter panel.
He's got to go up there and touch that wall before he'd be happy.
Gotta get that decal off that right rear.
You know, Wendy had mentioned earlier that Greg Biffle had won 3 times here, and there's actually consecutive wins, 2004 to 2006. This has kind of been a Roush Fenway house the last few years. He has 6 wins here with 4 different drivers. They've won the last 5, and 6 out of the last 7. Carl Edwards won it last year. A little bit of fuel strategy at the end.
Yeah, but, you know, and I would say, oh, man, these guys, they're about a shoe-in to win this thing. But when you haven't won a race all year, I don't care where you go. The odds are you might not win another, you know, you may not win because you just hadn't had that kind of year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have sat here a year ago and said, here's a guy that won this race, 9 wins in 2008, and winless, Carl Edwards in the 99 car.
That's just unbelievable to me.
But I think that kind of puts an explanation point as we watch the 42 car Juan Pablo Montoya come off of turn 4, that when you get off a little bit in this sport, it can just be disastrous.
Yeah.
And it's taken them all year long. And even though they won the first 2 races, they won Daytona and they won in California, but they really haven't been a threat in a lot of other places.
This man here is determined to win this practice. He just jumped back up there at a 31.18 over 173 miles per hour average.
Darryl, we were doing This Week in NASCAR a couple weeks ago, and your brother Michael said, who would have ever believed, sounded just like you, who would have ever believed that Roush Fenway wouldn't even have a win this year? And Chad jumped right up and said, Matt Kenseth won at Daytona and then California. Michael never skipped a beat. Went, besides those.
Well, how about McMurray at Talladega?
Forgot that one too.
And that one too.
Yeah, and besides that.
Yeah.
Sam Hornish, 9th overall in his Dodge. Juan Pablo now the quickest. We've got about 20 minutes left in this practice at Homestead-Miami.
Business is picking up.
Yeah. continues in the Sprint Cup garage area. We are 1 hour, 13 minutes into a 90-minute practice.
Hey, there's another one of our NASCAR on Fox guys.
10-year anniversary.
Matt Yoakum.
Speaking of anniversaries, he just got recently married.
He did.
Congratulations, Matt.
I wonder how the honeymoon goes. Like Kyle Busch. And Dave
Considering
Rogers.
he's sitting on the top of Tony Stewart's truck by himself.
Yeah, you do the math.
He's with the Godfather.
Juan Pablo Montoya, Clint Boyer, Kurt Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Kevin Harvick leading the way. Joey Logano is the quickest Toyota. He's 6th overall.
You know, I mentioned the fact about Jeff Gordon not winning here in Sprint Cup. He has a Nationwide Series win here back in 2000.
But you know, Larry, to your point, you said this a few weeks ago. For example, Jimmy Johnson hasn't ever had to win here.
No, I mean,
no.
You know, Chad Canals said that earlier in the week. You know, especially look at the last 3 or 4 years, they've come in here on defense pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that very same thing. I can remember, you know, whether we went to Atlanta or Roadside or Riverside, whatever the last race for the 2 of the season was, we didn't go there. Honestly, we didn't go there trying to win. We went there with a car that could win if we had to, but we really went there playing defense, being sure we finished the race where we needed to. And that's the way you got to approach this thing.
Larry talked about the Roush domination here the last 5 races. Matt Kenseth got a win here in 2007.
Matt sitting 14th in points, coming in here 45 points behind Kyle Busch for that 13th spot.
Moves up the chart just a little bit, and it's going to be kind of sad, guys. DeWalt, been a long-time sponsor on the 17 car, won't be coming back next year. Matt will get a different sponsor next year. I understand that Crown Royal will now be his primary sponsor in 2010.
You know, guys, Jimmy Johnson just made a mock qualifying run. He's 10th quickest at a 31.52. The more I'm watching, I'm not sure in practice they're going to knock that 31.18 off the top. That's pretty stout that Montoya laid down a while ago.
But I watched Jimmy Johnson, just like you said, he didn't get down on that bottom and dig like some of these guys did. I'm not so sure that there's not a little trickery going on. You know, he ran a pretty high line, and you're not going to get the quick lap that you need to get around here. It's total quality.
Bob Dillner.
Well, guys, that's exactly what Chad Canals and Jimmy Johnson were talking about before that run. Chad Canals noticed that Clint Boyer and some of the faster guys, Kurt Busch, they ran the top of the track, and the 48 team and the 5 team have been on the bottom of the racetrack in mock qualifying trim this whole time. So Chad Canals made Jimmy Johnson try that top groove. They definitely did improve time. They went from 22nd quick to 10th quick, but not exactly where they want to be. Now, Jimmy Johnson reported that he could actually gain a little bit more time, being that was the first time that they tried that. As far as his teammate Mark Martin, he's not going to try the top groove. He said it's a little too late in practice, so he told Alan Gustafson, I'm sticking to the bottom feeder side of things here around this racetrack, and we all know that Mark loves the low side.
And he just picked up about 2.5 tenths with that run right there. He went from a 31.70 to a 31.46, puts him 7th quickest.
And this whole thing, it just depends on your race car. I mean, you got to have a car that will turn when you drive down into the bottom of the racetrack like that. It's got to have some front grip, and you got to be able to stay in the gas, come up off the corner. And that's the whole thing about how your car is set up, is where you're going to run this qualifying lap at.
Brian Vickers just 23rd fastest in his Toyota. He's run 20 laps. Wendy?
Well, Brian Vickers was wondering if everyone in the garage area was having the problems he has when it comes to chattering the front tires. Through the center and full throttle, his tires have a serious chatter on them in this practice session. He said, I don't know if it's this tire, if it's everyone in the garage, or it's just us. And in doing my research in the garage, it sounds like it's just Brian Vickers having those issues. He's also loose in, tight in the center, and even on the top, he said the lower he goes on the racetrack, about that bottom groove, is the worse his car gets. And that's his other concern. He needs to get to the bottom better. He said, I can't run that high line all race on Sunday. We need to get the bottom a little bit better. Brian Vickers trying to get his car more comfortable, get that chatter out of his race car. They have not done any qualifying run. I'm sorry, they are getting ready to do a qualifying run right here. So if you see him jump on the chart a little bit, that's what they've been focusing on in race runs. Brian Vickers nonetheless still a decent session in listening to his feedback on his race car.
Hey, Wendy.
Yes, sir.
Guess what just showed up in the booth?
Let me guess, homemade cookies that somebody brought for me.
Yeah.
Looks like they dropped the bag about 10 times getting up here.
No, I don't know about that. Those my lovely friends from Florida brought me nice homemade gifts, and I'm handing them to you guys in the booth.
Thank you
I don't
very
need
much.
You guys can have the calories.
We don't need them right now, but Wendy, you were correct. The 83 did jump up to 15 quicker. And Daryl, we were looking at each other. When you've got to turn that wheel a little bit more, it's going to make the front wheels chatter. Running high makes it a little easier on the front tires.
But that's the only time. I think that's the first time I've heard anybody talk about tire chatter.
Did you do his hair, Daryl?
I could. I got that color.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. pretty sporty in this practice. 3rd overall in his Chevrolet.
You know, I talked at the top of the show about teams that's not won in 2009. I think when I look at this 88 team, yeah, I know Junior Nation would love for him to win this race. They just need to end the year with a good, solid run. As you mentioned, a good car at the beginning, the middle, and the end to close the race out.
Yeah, they just seem to have I don't know if it's a communication problem. I'm not sure what it is. But when you can't adjust your car during the race, you're not going to win any races. The teams that win, they make the right changes at the right time. These guys always seem to make the wrong changes at the wrong time.
Well, Robbie Gordon's got an interesting weekend logistically. He's competing in the Baja 1000 in Mexico. Matt Crafton is going to help set this race car up before Robbie gets here.
Yeah, and the Baja 1000 is the 5th and final event of the Ducati Score International Off-Road Championship. And Robbie's actually currently leading those points, and then he hopes to be back here on Sunday.
Daryl, getting back to your point about Dale Earnhardt Jr., it's now 56 races between wins, and people stop me and ask me all the time, what's wrong with that race team? And I think your point is right. The championship teams like Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, they get better as the race goes on. They make, most of the time, the right adjustments.
Well, you know what I think it is? A lot of it has to do with attitude. You know, if you get beat down, and the kid is, I got to tell you, he's beaten down. When you get beaten down like that, you start every race saying, okay, so what's going to happen today? You know, what's going to happen to the car? Is the motor going to blow up? We're going to have a tire failure. We're going to make a bad pit stop. Something's going to happen bad today. I just know it. And when it does, when you have that kind of attitude, it usually does.
Brad Keselowski just jumped up to the 7th spot in his Dodge.
Guys, this is something you don't normally see at a place like Homestead. You normally see us on a super speedway, but everybody's trying to find that opening to make a qualifying run here with about 8 minutes left in this practice session to see exactly what they got, get that, I guess you might say, optimum track space, so you don't have to worry about somebody messing your lap up.
Well, what you don't want is, it's not a lot. There was some draft here, but not a lot. But what you don't want is a distraction. When you go to qualify, buddy, you got to put it all on the line. And you don't want to see a car up ahead of you and wonder if he's going to go up the hill or down the hill, or is he going to, you want a clear track.
Especially when he cocks one sideways off of turn 4.
He screws up your lap. This is your last shot right here to see what you got.
Daryl, while we got you up here, let's just play, you're in that 14 car right now. What did you just do rolling off of into pit road right there, coming to take the green? What are you thinking? What are you trying to get accomplished?
It's that old saying, you know how we always say, drive it like you stole it? That's how, coming to get the green. I don't think people realize, it's just a warm-up lap. There is no warm-up lap. When you get ready to go qualify, you leave the end of pit road and you go through every gear, max RPM. You got to go, and you got to come to the green, and you got to be wide open, and you got to run the best lap you run all day.
Do you catch yourself inside that car taking a deep breath and saying,
no.
Oh man, he had his hands full. He was up in the gray area right there. That 14 was on that lap.
You know what I said at the end of pit road just before I get ready to go out, and I would take, there you go. See, he jumps up here to 3rd.
No, 5th.
Or 5th. I would sit there at the end of pit road and take deep breaths, really deep breaths. You know why? Because I knew I wasn't going to be breathing for about 35 seconds.
So he wasn't breathing right here? Watch this, Daryl.
Yikes. Ooh. You know, he thinks he's at Eldora.
You almost got him a pastel green stripe. I know that. Bob Dillner.
Clint Boyer among the fastest cars on the racetrack. So we know you have a fast race car. How good is it, and what do you need to work on still?
Well, we were fast on the same tire in Texas, in practice, and we had a good draw just like we do this weekend. and we didn't adjust on it. We want to make sure, that's why we put an extra set of tires on it there. Wanted to make sure that we free up enough to, on into this evening, we can go ahead and lay a lap down. Cheerios Hamburger Helper Chevrolet was really fast. It's hot down here. The track's slipping and sliding around. It's going to be interesting in race trim, but qualifying so far, the car's fast. I think we could have a shot for it.
Well, Steve, these RCR cars are starting to turn it around. A second and a seventh last week.
Bob, they're getting quicker, and I tell you, another guy that just got quicker, Kurt Busch, has now supplanted Juan Pablo Montoya, top the timing and scoring monitor. As we watch Juan Pablo.
It's been very eventful in turn 4 for Juan Pablo Montoya in the 42 car.
Didn't we see that earlier?
We saw it similar to that earlier, and then of course right after that, last time we saw that is when he spun out coming on 4. One thing we need to mention, we've got 48 cars here, and just you've got the championship provisional that would have to be factored in, but the 5 slowest of those, we know 5 will be going home. Quapple, Papa, Skinner, Blaney, and Terry Labonte are the 5 slowest, but what's interesting is Bobby Labonte was just in front of that pack, but he's now jumped up there to 24th quickest.
Closing minutes of practice. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this here on Speed. Glad you're with us here on Championship Weekend. Less than 2 minutes remain in this practice, and Jimmy Johnson went out for one more run. He was real high.
I'm not so sure he didn't. Man, if he didn't touch it, he got mighty close.
He missed a great chance, and he runs about a 10th slower than what he had run earlier. So we know that will be his last run. So right now he's sitting 20th quickest.
I just wouldn't do that. I'd go to the bottom. I'd have to work on to make it work at the bottom.
But the thing is, right now we talked about Mark Martin not wanting to do that. He just made a quick run, and he ran faster on the high growth. Take a look at this 48. He's up there. He's rim riding. He looked like Tony Stewart. Look at the dust.
And I tell you, right there, you're not in the throttle. I mean, you're not wide open in the throttle. You got to get up out of it.
Those marbles are hitting those fender wells.
You got to get up out of it a little bit, because if you don't, you're going to hit the fence.
Bob Dillner.
Kurt Busch quickest so far in this practice session. You seem all pumped up, high fives with the crew and so forth. And I think how you termed your lap is you nailed it.
Yeah, it was just a fun joke we've got internally, but really the car has a good feel. And I've been here in this position before, quick in practice, and then I ended up 38th after qualifying. So just taking it easy. It's our last qualifying run of the year with the Miller Lite Dodge, and everybody's just got that Miami theme going on. It feels fun. The season's almost over, but we still got one more good one left in us.
Cautiously optimistic for the Blue Deuce so far, and this is the same car he won with at Texas.
Well, you know what else? I tell you, this track, if I look at this track right here in the booth, it reminds me of Atlanta. Remember how he ran in Atlanta?
Yeah.
And this track has that Atlanta kind of feel to it to me.
And you know, we've had 10 races here, 9 different pole winners. The only guy to repeat was Kurt Busch, and there you see the red and the black waving. Go back and document what we were talking about before we went to break. Right now, the way it is, the 5 cars that would go home per the practice sheet would be Mike Skinner, Dave Blaney, Travis Quapple, Max Pappas, and Michael McDowell. Terry Labonte would be in on the championship provisional if this was qualifying. It's going to be tight back there. I'm seeing hundredths of a second separating those guys back in that area.
Yeah, because Bobby Labonte is 29th, and he doesn't have much of a cushion over the guys that are below him. So if he messed up, his qualifying run could be trouble.
And Terry Labonte is pulling for Bobby Labonte to run fast.
And Terry Labonte, his brother, has not been off of that bottom down there the whole day. The bottom of the chart I'm talking about.
45 drivers ran a lap in the 31-second bracket. There you see miles per hour. Kurt Busch the quickest.
Steve, you talked about it earlier. The luck of the draw is going to have a lot, I think, to do with the way this thing kind of lines up. If these clouds kind of break up a little bit, the track starts to get a little bit warm, guys going out early, they're going to give up some grip and they're going to give up some speed. Guys who go out later, well, they're going to benefit from having that late draw, like Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, I'm sure Jimmy Johnson's pretty happy with the draw. If nothing else today, but you know something that bothers me? I don't like the fact that they changed their style here in qualifying. He's a bottom sucker. He always has been. Today, Chad talked him into running that high line. It might be faster, but it's different, and I don't like different at this time.
Darrell, we loved having you back. You going to come back and play?
I'll be here. I'll be appearing here nightly, locally.
2 shows nightly. Please tip your waiters and waitresses.
Juan Pablo Montoya brings out the only caution, but he didn't hit anything. That's the good news. Right now, we step aside and hand it off to John Roberts.